we have a great program for you today, as always, with Los Altos Stage Company Board President Vicki Reeder and Executive Artistic Director Gary Landis providing an update on the results of the initial feasibility study. Let me start by introducing our guests. And oops, it's garbage day here, so there's some noise outside. I don't know if it's bothering anybody, but no, okay. So first of all, Vicki, who grew up in Puyallup, Washington, which is near Tacoma, she realized she liked the bright lights of the stage in a kindergarten-age dance class. So that's been quite some time, Vicki. She met her future husband, Dave, in junior high school, became his girlfriend in high school, and married him 7 years later. Vicki and Dave moved to Mountain View, California, where Dave had his first job. She holds a BA in Fine Arts from Washington State University. When her kids were young, Vicki was a Brownie Troop leader, school site council president, and music for minors docent. She's a longtime member of the American Association of University Women, which is a member of the coalition. And she has served on the board at the local, state, and national levels of AAUW. She is the local coordinator of AAUW's national project Tech Trek, which funds summer science camps for 7th grade girls. And I believe Marge Bruno, who's also on the call, is very involved with Tech Trek as well. As a subscriber to the first theater in the Bus Barn building, Los Altos Conservatory Theater, as it was known then, she joined the board in the late 1980s and was involved in closing the theater in the early 90s when it was in debt. At Roy Lave's request, she agreed to help establish a new theater in 1994-95 and is still presiding as board chair. She participated in the first Follies in 1992 and continues to produce, write, direct, and perform in the show, concluding her run in 2018, theoretically, then rebooting the Follies in 2021 as a virtual and live hybrid, followed by a full-blown updated Follies in 2022. Plans for this year's Follies, which will be on October 5th, 6th, and 7th, are in progress now. Vicki's interests include jazz, vocal music from the Great American Songbook, art, politics, literature, women's issues, community activism, food, and travel, especially to France. Too bad she doesn't have anything else going on in her life. She has 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren and is a longtime mentor at Los Altos High School for female students during their high school years. And then Gary Landis has been for over nearly 4 decades, has had a career in the arts. He's been an actor, director, scenic designer, stage manager, stagehand, arts marketer, and fundraising professional. His life in the theater began at an early age, acting in Los Angeles-based youth theater, and then continued to deepen throughout high school and college in Southern California, to include directing and stage design. Gary holds a bachelor's degree in arts and theater arts from California State University, Northridge, a master's degree in theater history, theory, and criticism from the University of Pittsburgh, and a master's degree in arts management from Carnegie Mellon University. Gary joined the Los Altos Stage Company in 2012, bringing with him 25 years of arts management experience with organizations large and small across a variety of disciplines: theater, music, visual arts. He worked in regional theater in Washington, D.C. At the Arena Stage, and locally, he has worked in the performing arts in San Francisco and Yerba Buenas at the Theater Art Taud and Yerba Buenas Center for the Arts, and prior to returning to theater in Los Altos in the visual arts in both San Francisco and San Jose. Over the past 12 years at Los Altos Stage Company, Gary has been intimately involved in all aspects of the theater, including sound designer, projection designer, actor, and director. During the closure of the theater as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, Gary led the theater's efforts to create new artistic programming online. The San Francisco Bay Area Theater Critics Circle recognized these efforts with a certificate of commendation for distinguished online work during the pandemic. Please join me in welcoming Vicki and Gary this morning. And now Vicki and Gary will provide an update on the initial feasibility study of locating Los Altos Stage Company's new theater downtown. Go for it. Take it away, Gary.
Hi, Vicki's going to take it away before
Okay.
Gary does. We're just going to run through the slides we presented to the City Council in May. Thank you very much, Marie, and all the leaders of the Los Altos Community Coalition for this opportunity to discuss the new theater study. A little bit of background, Los Altos Stage has been a partner with the City of Los Altos. If you include Los Altos Conservatory Theater, we've had a partnership relationship and been in that same building, the bus barn, for almost 50 years. I think it's like 47 years adding up all together. So basically, the idea of a new theater downtown is not new. It comes up every so often, and we're always excited. And it's really exciting this time because now we are moving further down the road with actually seeing if it's possible. You probably know King Lear in 2014 presented a proposal to the council then, and then in 2018, the city downtown vision was adopted, which discusses in quite a bit of detail putting a theater on a downtown parking plaza. 2 years ago, I was approached by a council member and asked to create a working group to look at this idea of a new theater. And I did, and we met for 2 years, and then the stage company hired a consultant, Bill Blake from AMS Research in Sacramento. We have been meeting, and the result of all that effort was that we reached an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with the City Council, which has now been extended 2 more years. It was I think originally a 3-year memorandum of understanding, and we've extended it to the end of calendar year 25. We found great value in all the previous work that had been done, especially the downtown vision. And we made that our starting point and the recommendation that the theater be sited on a parking plaza that had the possibility of also on that one plaza, including some kind of a housing structure and some kind of parking structure. So I'm not going to read the slide to you. These are, if you haven't read the downtown or looked at it lately, I suggest you do. But basically, we agree with what it proposed was that a downtown theater is feasible, and our feasibility study also we'll go through these slides, and you'll see that they think it's feasible. That the theater should be a multi-use facility for various cultural and community activities, but will primarily be a live theater house for the stage company and the city's youth theater program. The new theater should contain state-of-the-art equipment to facilitate an expanded youth theater program, indie movies, video projects, music, dance events, meeting space especially for teens and nonprofits, all while using the available downtown parking, mostly in evenings and weekend afternoons. So what we propose is a 160-seat theater compared to the current 100 seats at the bus barn, with an estimated construction cost of $23 million. And our plan is that those construction funds will be raised from grants and private individuals. And we forecast an operating first-year budget in year 2028, if this is being very optimistic, of $1 million. So Gary will describe in more detail now the pillars of what we want to do and the actual details of the feasibility study.
Okay, great. Yeah, what I'm going to do is kind of briefly try to summarize the overall vision and concept for the project, as well as go through the slides and the information that Bill Blake, the consultant from AMS, presented at the City Council session. Bill went into a great deal of detail. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible about each one, and then hopefully at the end, if there's any need to kind of expand on any of the information, we can try to do that in the questions and answer portion of the meeting. I know a good portion of you had either been at or seen the city council presentation, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. Overall, conceptually, we envision a new theater for Los Altos as a neighborhood playhouse located at the heart of Los Altos that has a robust schedule of arts programming activities centered on and for the community of Los Altos. The building and its programming would consist of 3 programmatic pillars, each of which, interwoven, will create a vibrant cultural gathering place for the residents of all ages. So the first pillar is intergenerational, multicultural, multidisciplinary performing arts programming aimed to entertain, enlighten, and enrich community connections among local residents. The examples of this being kind of West Coast premieres of plays that explore the challenges of college admissions, for example, or an intimate concert by a quartet of saxophones that breaks down boundaries between hip hop, jazz, and classical music, and a film series that illuminates the importance of place building across regions and cultures. The second pillar, let's go to this, is youth education, engagement, and empowerment placed front and center of the physical space, the programming philosophy, and the operational model. We envision professionally produced youth-driven productions on the main stage, year-round creative play and skill-based arts workshops and classes for all ages, high school and college internships and mentorships with professional artists, designers, and arts administrators, and a physical dedicated youth lounge located prominently in the theater lobby where theater kids can hang out with each other, watch rehearsals of shows being streamed on flat screens, and chat with visiting actors and other artists about their life in the arts. The third pillar would be a dedicated community access opportunities that expand the public's interaction and investment in the facility. This would enable, for instance, a ballet recital on the main stage by the students of Los Altos Dance Academy, or a youth poetry slam on the main stage showcasing the work of students from Los Altos Mountain View High School, or cultural facilities, celebration, dance performances of all kinds. Now, we believe a new theater for Los Altos, a neighborhood playhouse built upon these 3 pillars, will truly advance the city's vision for a vibrant downtown, greatly expanding and elevating opportunities for community connectivity, for youth engagement, and public participation in the cultural life of Los Altos. Going on to the specific study itself, the key findings or recommendations. So, scope of work. So there were 6 basic questions that guided the scope of work. What are the priorities, needs, and opportunities for a new building in the downtown? What are the community's interests regarding program, and what are the community's attendance patterns and preferences? What is the conditions of the local market, and what is the competitive landscape of other organizations currently operating in the local market? What is the best balance of activities within the building that broaden and deepen our current offerings and that provide space for the community to access the building? What is the appropriate configuration of the facility given these programmatic interests and needs? And what's the best operating structure for the organization operating this building? The scope of work from AMS was divided into 2 phases. The first phase was a feasibility assessment of the organization, as well as assessment of the market conditions and the current competition, as well as the community's input as far as interest in what types of programming to take place in the space. And then phase 2, based on that information, looking at a programmatic and operating model for the space, what kinds of programs, how many programs, how many people engaged in the programs, and then looking at a facility allocation plan, what type of space and what size of space is necessary in order to implement those programs. And then what would the relative cost be of operating that program, and how would that cost be funded in terms of contributed and earned income. So in the first phase, we looked at, one of the first things we looked at, or the consultants looked at, was the current state of the Los Altos Stage Company. Based on their assessment of our information and meetings with us, they determined that the stage company is on a solid operational and financial footing. That we've seen an attendance growth over the last decade, a little bit of a pause with the pandemic, but that growth is returning post-pandemic. That the revenue had grown over those years, along with the attendance, but they also found that the current bus barn facility sets limitations on the organization, both in terms of the amount of programming that can be done and also in the audience engagement, audience amenities that the current building provides. Unfortunately, I cannot see all of this stuff, but let's try here. They then did a market assessment. They found that the primary market, as we know, has high income, high disposable income in the market. It has a population that is 55% under the age of 40, which represents kind of future arts growth potential. And within, especially within Los Altos, that a good portion of the households have children living at home, which indicates strong potential for youth and multi-generational programming. Within the first phase, community survey was also initiated. They were able to get 445 residents to respond to the survey. The survey response showed that a majority of the respondents have a high interest in having arts programming and a diverse content, including programs for youth, film and lectures, theater, and live entertainment, and that the majority of the responders supported the idea of a multi and intergenerational gathering place that contributes to downtown vitality. So based on this first assessment, they came to the conclusion that the organization has a strong foundation, that the market has both a wealth and age and interest population that could support attendance in arts organizations, and that the community is broadly in support of the idea of a multi-disciplinary, multi-generational programming facility in the downtown. They then took that information and worked with us to kind of put together a programming matrix where we try to take that input and assign it to activities, and came up with programming that would have an annual attendance in a building of around 20,000 attendees over the course of the year that participated in 725 activities annually. These activities, again, including community events, concerts, lectures, film, Los Altos Stage Company and Los Altos Youth Theater performances, classes and camps, rehearsals, rentals, etc. Based on that programming, then they looked at what type of facility would support that. And they believed that a 23,000 square foot facility would be able to support this level of programming. That 23,000 square foot would include 160 seat theater. We and they believe that 160 seats or thereabout is the right size for Los Altos to keep both the historical integrity of the organization and the strengths of the organization regarding kind of the intimacy of the connection between the audience members and the community and the artists on stage. But it would also provide a kind of expanded use within the facility. That 23,000 square feet also includes kind of back of house spaces in order to support the performances within the theater. Those spaces are such as storage, costumes, dressing rooms, back of house to create and build the sets, etc. That this would include classroom space, both for rehearsals and for classes and workshops. And as well, this would include kind of front of house space, uh, lobby, patio, community gathering space, bathrooms, etc. Um, it was determined in the kind of layering of these spaces that a 13,000 square foot footprint would be necessary, that um, there can be multi-levels to this building, but when considering that the primary space of the building is the theater, that roughly is on one space, the 13,000 square feet minimum wouldn't be able to do it, and the other things, classes and storage, dressing rooms, could be layered within the building itself. Looking at projects throughout the Bay Area, including the community center, as well as other theaters that had been built over the last years, they determined a order of magnitude, roughly of $1,000 a square foot, and that this property would be proposed as a privately financed through donations building that would then be gifted to the city. So while it would be the not-for-profit would raise the monies to build a building, and the not-for-profit would be contracted to the building would be gifted back to the city and owned by the city. Quickly on the budget, they looked at comparables across a number of theaters, and this has been true since I started in arts administration way back 30 years ago. Theaters, both locally and nationally, roughly operate on a 50-50 contributed to earned revenue operational model. And we don't see any difference why this theater wouldn't be the same. Earned revenue from classes, rental fees, ticket sales would represent 50% of the income to operate the building, and grants from corporations, foundations, individuals, and special events would comprise the remaining 50%. They mapped out some scenarios for the budgets of the organization. Currently, Los Altos Stage Company has a budget of around 625,000, though that may be a little bit more this year. And they were projecting a slow increase over the 5 years prior to opening of the building, as the organization builds up its resources in order to deal with the expanded. And then in the year after the opening, both with the increase in attendance, the increase in ticket sales, and the projected increase in donations that would be a result of the capital campaign, that year one would see the greatest increase in resources for the organization, and then a kind of slow and steady build of the organization up to a base year, which they were looking at a base year where everything would be kind of fully operational in year 5 of around 1 point, I think they had 1.6 plus in operating. So moving the organization over the course of these number of years from its roughly $625,000, $650,000 budget to around $1 million budget at opening, and then over that 5-year period, increasing over that time. They write up there too. The assumption is that the stage company would assume all building operation and maintenance. So in broad terms, I know that's quickly through the information, but the summary that they presented and the summary that we believe is true is that the stage company is on a firm financial footing, that the company is poised for growth post-COVID. Again, we were on a very strong growth trajectory prior to COVID. COVID created a lot of interesting scenarios for everybody, but now we are returning back to full operations, and we are seeing the return of audiences and the return of students back to our programming. And that the current facility is a constraint and not necessarily an opportunity for the organization or for the community that uses the organization's facility. And the market assessment, there's strong potential for growth. The primary market has strong indicators for arts consumptions, and locally family and younger adult households, indicating opportunity for future growth. Community survey shows support, that the majority support the idea of a new theater for Los Altos, and that there's strong interest in community-focused gathering place with a diversity of content. In the second part of the phase, in the kind of programmatic and building assessment, the proposal is for a very active year-round, during the day and at nighttime operating venue that about 20,000 residents will be able to will be taking part and accessing the building, that there's over 700 activities engaged over the course of the year, and that these are productions, rehearsals, community events, concerts, community gatherings, etc. As Vicki said at the beginning, the structure that could handle this is a 160-seat theater, that we see this as a public-private partnership between the city and the stage company, that it's stage company operated but city owned. We will talk about the existing space of Bus Barn. The current site of Bus Barn does not have enough footprint to handle what is being proposed to the building. As we said earlier, the footprint that was assessed would be about a 13,000 square foot footprint. That's significantly more than what the current Bus Barn footprint is. To look at the current site, there would be a need to look at expanding its footprint into other areas that currently kind of aren't on the table as far as consideration within the Civic Center. And we do believe that both the building and the programming and the location of the building in the downtown parking plaza fits and supports into the downtown vision plan that the city had commissioned in the last years. There was a little bit of conversation at the end of it about the growth and economic impact of a new theater. That the new building would equal growth for Los Altos Stage Company, that there would be growth in sales, classes, and rentals, and that the contributed revenue obviously would need to grow in order to both handle the building of the building as well as the operation of the building. And that ultimately, when up and operating, that these things would have a positive economic impact on downtown regarding the visitors to the stage company, as well as the employees to the stage company, which are generating income for the organization and generating tax revenue for the city. That, in broad strokes, was the presentation that was presented to the city. At the end of the presentation to the city, we had a conversation about the next steps and asked for city support at that meeting to determine a large question at that meeting was whether or not this is a standalone building or whether or not this is a multi-use building regarding the other objectives of the city as far as housing and mostly regarding affordable housing and parking. At the conclusion of the city meeting, the majority of the council had a conversation around supporting the idea about looking more toward a single-use building as opposed to trying to incorporate multiple city objectives into a single facility. The next steps also for us after we got the determination from the city and the city staff that this vision is supported, is to raise the funds and pursue a capital campaign funding analysis now to determine within the resources needed to build such a building, whether or not those resources were available within the community. So that's kind of where we are right now, is about generating the funds to support this capital campaign funding analysis, about securing proposals from companies who specialize in this work, and about undertaking that analysis hopefully over the next 18 months. And that is a lot of information.
Thank you so much to both of you. So I now will ask you some questions, many of which you have already addressed in your presentation. However, I think some bear repeating the information. So, bear with me on that if you do find that we have repeats of answers you've already given. Is there anything you'd like to add to the presentation at this time? And were there any findings in the feasibility study that surprised you, either Vicki or Gary?
Becky, do you want to start or you want?
Gary, you should talk. My gardener's blowing his blower out in my backyard, right?
Can't hear him.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily anything to off the top of the head to add to the presentation. Like I said, we currently are in the phase of generating the resources and to enter the next phase, which I think will give us a lot of information about the community's level of support and interest in the building. When asked the question about putting kind of dollar numbers to interest, that definitely sparks a lot of interesting conversations. The I think what surprised us mostly in the study was how close um, the how close our original vision was to what ultimately came out. That we over the last 10 years have been looking at and talking about a facility and what would be the right size for the organization and what type of programming would be the appropriate for the community's interests. And the community surveys and the other information gathering uh, did reinforce those initial kind of concepts, and the the original kind of thoughts about what resources it would take in order to build such a facility did kind of bear out with the finding from the consultants. Without any kind of, we didn't provide them our thoughts beforehand. They came back and they were pretty in line with where we were thinking originally.
Okay. Thank you. Vicki, anything to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. So at this time, do you know what it would, whether renovation of the bus barn building, the one you're currently in now, is feasible? And if so, what it would cost?
We
I
certainly,
know,
we talk about it a lot. I don't believe personally that it's renovatable. It's from 1940. It's a metal shed that's been sitting there for all those years and not really being maintained. Um, I I think we would have to scrape it and begin again. And unless Gary, you have anything to add to that, it's an inadequate, difficult facility that we've made great use of for a very, very long time. But it's not really, we have not had any estimates of what it would cost to scrape it and rebuild. I think all of you who know what building costs are in the city, it wouldn't be any different.
Yeah, there hasn't been an assessment of kind of renovating the building. The major issues that are addressed in the feasibility study for a new building, if those ideas were brought to the current bus barn building, a number of things would happen. One, it would require kind of taking the building completely down and building up. So the square footage costs would be the same if it's in this building or the other building. Um, the biggest challenge of the current space is that its current footprint would truly only allow for an auditorium to be built in that space. The additional things of classrooms and other kind of community support activities, literally not enough room on the current space in order to do that without going into the soccer field or other spaces that are already dedicated for other uses. Also, the probably the larger concept about renovating the bus barn versus downtown is that in line with the downtown vision, the orientation of the arts facility to other businesses who would benefit from the attendance within the arts facility was a primary objective. The building in the current space, I think, would do the objectives of elevating some of the programming and elevating the audience experience if a building was built there. But both the expansion of programming within youth programming, the expansion within community engagement, and the alignment of the attendance in the arts facility with other businesses in downtown wouldn't necessarily be achieved.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that, we were approached, I was approached with the idea of forming a group to look at the feasibility of a downtown theater. So the state of the bus barn itself was not the primary focus at all of our work.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned 20,000 visits downtown. If the theater were located downtown, is that additional visits or does it
20,000
include?
is the total visits to the additional visits from what we currently have, you mean?
Yeah,
So, and I'll give you pre-pandemic numbers since those were the numbers. Pre-pandemic, it was about 10. New building is about 20.
okay.
So a
And
10,
so,
10 additional engagement. Um, but obviously the proximity, the majority of the people who come to us drive and park at the Civic Center don't cross San Antonio in order to participate in restaurants or things
I see.
downtown. The alignment of being able to park downtown, go to a restaurant downtown, and walk to the theater downtown is where we see it. Even though it's a doubling in attendance, it's more than a doubling in the engagement with downtown.
So I'm guessing you would say then that the same benefits to the community could not be achieved by keeping the current location of the theater. Is that correct? Because
Um,
people don't now seem to cross over to go downtown for dinner,
I, I,
say.
I think the benefits of building a space within the community center um, are more in line to kind of enriching the experience of the current attendees of it, that the objectives of revitalizing downtown, bringing more business to downtown, those aren't achieved in the same way or achieved at all within the building and maintaining within the Civic Center. Would it improve our audience experience and improve our ability to offer theater productions or the quality of theater? That could be achieved with building on the Best Barn, but these other um, city objectives and other programming objectives around a community engagement wouldn't be.
I just add that, look at the downtown vision. They go into quite a few specifics about the benefits of the park once dine and go to a performance. They sort of spell it all out. So I refer you to take a look at those pages in the vision.
Can you please clarify what exactly has the city of Los Altos committed to at this point? I think
They
there's some confusion about that.
Well, they've committed to, they've extended the MOU at a recent meeting to, as I mentioned earlier, to be in effect through November of 2025, which gives us a couple more years to get the capital campaign analysis done. I'm not expecting that to take 2 years. I'm expecting that to take maybe hopefully 6 or 8 months, starting soon. And then and they've also agreed that city staff can work with us now. In other words, we're hoping that the city will be doing some work of their own. They have the expertise to find out what's under the asphalt down there. I'm quite curious myself to look at, do their own engineering studies and meet with us and work collaboratively to advance to the next phase of the project. Those two things, the MOU and the city staff will be engaged with us on preparing the next steps.
Okay. And does the stage company anticipating asking the city for a financial contribution for either the fundraising feasibility analysis and or the construction of the theater?
It's too soon not at this time. We don't know what will come out of the capital campaign analysis. We're not looking for funding right now. We're looking for individual funding.
Okay.
Right. So So, and we had discussed at the city council meeting that, this is a step by step
Right.
process. And so we've done the first step of this. The next step is the capital campaign. We haven't asked, or are we anticipating asking the city for any financial support for the capital campaign analysis? Then we'll have that information that we'll engage and present and discuss with the community and with the city and the city council, then determining what the next steps are based on that information.
And also, I want to open it up for questions from the attendees very soon here, but last question. We hear that advocates for affordable housing downtown are concerned about competition for space with the standalone building that you're proposing. In your opinion, is that concern justified? And do you have any other comments related to that issue?
No one from the affordable housing booster, well, booster is kind of the wrong word, advocates has approached us in any way. Looking again at the downtown vision map, it shows all the plazas eventually being covered with various structures, including affordable housing, including 1 or 2 parking structures. So I don't think it's a conflict. I think there's a lot of, I mean, the whataboutism we go through now with what about the police station and what about this and what about that? I think those are all valid issues and concerns that those advocates have to propose and bring forward. But at the moment, I think we're, as Gary said, this is a step by step. And I don't think we're horning in on anybody's treasured parking space spot or other use of that area. I don't think taking part of a parking plaza will have a negative effect on any other projects that are proposed.
Right. I think that the comments made at the city council meeting by council members who stated that we can walk and chew gum. We can look at the affordability issue, housing affordability and housing issue, and we can look at the theater. We were charged with just specifically looking at the theater issue and presenting the what if, how the city and the city council wants to pursue or incorporate the other objectives that they need to. We're supportive of, and it's definitely a question for city council and city staff.
Okay. Do you have any closing remarks before I open it up to the attendees for questions?
I just had someone just sent me a comment that says the theater and housing are consistent with the downtown vision, not in conflict. So I think all I can say is it's been exciting to get this far, to work on this and look at the possibilities. So I think we're looking forward to moving into the next phase. I've been in touch with about 6 different capital campaign consultants, and they've responded to me eagerly. So I'm looking forward to the next phase.
Okay, so now I'm going to open it up to the attendees for questions. And I know, Jennifer, you put something in the chat. Please raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you if you have a question. And remember, 1 question per person until everyone has had the opportunity to ask a question, and no speeches, please. So Jennifer, do you want to go with your question?
Sure. I was just wondering what space was being targeted in terms of the parking plaza currently. And yeah, that was my question.
It's identified in the vision, so you can find it and look on a map and see it. It's Parking Plaza 2 was proposed by the Downtown Vision, which is the one that the post office faces that the back sidewalk. And so Charles Schwab is on one end of it. And so that's that plaza between 2nd and 3rd and behind Main Street on the Walgreens side.
Thank you.
There was a second, and the vision also suggested an alternative choice would be the parking plaza across the street next to Los Altos Grill.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question?
I do, Marie. This is Freddie. I've had my hand up.
Oh, great. I didn't see it. Thank you.
Hi, my question is for Vicki. Vicki, what council member approached you to ask you to do this feasibility study?
Mayor Nisa Flyger.
Thank you.
Marie, there's also a hand from Pat, I believe. I don't know if you can't see the hands right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for this presentation, Vicki and Gary. My question is about the garage. A couple of times you have mentioned that 13,000 footprint, and I believe 64 parking places would be required for a maxed out theater performance. Who do you assume is going to pay for building a garage?
Well, it's part of what we'll look at in this next phase of the analysis. The capital campaign will certainly look at it. It's part of the, as I mentioned before, there is no garage included in the 23,000 square foot building we are proposing. So, and we are going to be working with the city. The city's doing another downtown parking study, and I think they're well aware that parking is on the mind of everybody as proposals are made to use the parking plazas. So I think that it's just going to be part of what we do, what we analyze next.
So just to clarify, when you do your study on the capital campaign, it will not only include the cost or donations or grants for building a theater, but also for funding a garage?
No, I don't believe it will do that. We will probably analyze the cost of what it would build to add underground or level or structure. I'm sure we'll learn the facts of that, but I'm not sure. I'm looking at the community to weigh in on how to create more parking structure downtown.
Thank you.
Okay, Lou Cartolano, you have your hand up.
Yes, regarding the involvement of city staff to explore the feasibility of building on Plaza 2, what's the budget for that?
And maybe Anthony can address that. I don't have any ability to address that.
I think at this time, the direction of city council was staff time. I don't know if there was a specified budget that was clearly stated at the study session.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we're at 9:26, so we're about to wrap up here. And I think, Kim, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I did, Marie. Thanks so much. When I was guiding the self-introductions earlier at the beginning of the program, I missed having the opportunity to call on someone who's frequently been here, Roy Lave. I think everybody's aware of his passing, and just wanted to say that he's sorely missed. I missed being able to call on him. He was an original co-founder and co-chair of the coalition. So among his many activities that have benefited the local community and the planet, this organization benefited as well. So I just wanted to mention him and acknowledge what a great person he was.
Can I just add, this project would not be in front of us today if it hadn't been for Roy. He really was enthusiastic from day one, and he roped me in and got me involved, and I'm missing him a lot.
Thank you, Vicki. Pat, your hand is up again? Or is that left over?
Yes, thank you. I think in the Q&A from a previous council meeting, it said that the theater group was going to ask the city for $50,000 to fund the next study. Is that still the case?
No, we just explained that we decided to avoid drama by doing that, and to ask our community to help us fund it without city paying any more money into the project.
Okay, no more drama then. Thank you, Vicki.
Okay, Freddie.
Yeah, I would just like to explore a little more about this city staff budget that Lou asked about. So, Anthony, time is money. And the city, every time we have a city council meeting and people would like to see things done, there is always the limitation that we do not have enough staff time to be able to devote to whatever. What amount of staff time, if you can't give us a budget, can you give us a number of hours? Some indication as to how much the city has committed vis-a-vis staff time to contributing to this feasibility study.
I believe that during the meeting, there was not a specified number of hours. I can say up to this point, it's been very limited, and just working with Vicki and Gary and having conversations about updates as to where the process is going. The city hasn't done the research to this point. We're looking forward to seeing what the capital campaign analysis does moving forward, and we'll assist as that process goes forward. But the city is obviously not doing the study itself. So the benefit is that we will just try and provide our expertise to the consultant and to Vicki and to Gary through this process.
So to sum up, it's open-ended.
As far as I know, we have not set a cap. I can say that, like I said, it's been very limited so far.
Thank you.
Could I just add that if this all goes in the best possible direction and the city ends up with some fabulous $23 to $25 million exciting structure and it's downtown, I think that will be a huge asset to the city, and that whatever the staff costs are will be easily absorbed.
Yes, Vicki, it's just always, as Gabe loves to tell us at council meetings, that if you take the resource and use it on this, something else suffers. So, you can pay for one thing or another, but not both.
Well, we're not asking the city to pay for this building. We're asking that let us.
No, staff time costs money. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, so this has to be the last question from Lou now, whose hand is up again. I don't know if that's a new hand up or a leftover hand up.
That's another hand since everyone is, there are no other questions. I apologize for having a backup, but at the beginning it was mentioned that there were 445 residents that responded to the survey. I would really like to see a copy of the survey and more information about the criteria, how the survey was conducted in terms of what was the database, what was the criteria for selecting randomly from the database. Who can I go to get this information?
Well, it's the property of Los Altos Stage Company. It was prepared by AMS Research, and I think that our board of directors would have to decide if we wish to release the particular data that's beyond what's already been released. So I guess we could bring it up at our next board meeting.
Well, that's kind of surprising because you're asking the city to use one of their parking lots to build this theater, but you won't give us more information about how you arrived at the data that supports the reports you've shown the city. What's the problem with doing that?
So I do think that there's a little bit of a confusion issue that just happened in this conversation, and it was interesting to say that we are asking the city for the use of this parking thing, when it was actually the Downtown Vision and the city that approached the Los Altos Stage Company about the possibility of exploring and what would the feasibility be of a theater on this parking plaza. The theater didn't come forward and ask the city. It was actually in reverse. To can the theater and the not-for-profit community and the donation community help support the community's vision for the downtown? And that was the focus of what the study was. If you want to go back to the presentation that was done at the city council, which is recorded, Bill Blake did describe in more detail the survey, what the mechanics of the survey were, and how it was administered. So that information is already on the record.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up now because I know a number of you need to leave, but I want to make a couple of announcements. One is that our next meeting will be on Friday, August 25th. We're going to take a break during July and most of August, coincident with the city council's break that they take every summer. It will be from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. as usual. Please join us. We're not sure at this time whether the presenter will be Vice Mayor Jonathan Weinberg or commissions, for which there are some openings. It depends on, the timing and the availability of of which one we do on the 25th, but we will do our best to cover all topics of interest in the remaining months of this year. So if you would like to be added to the Los Altos Community Coalition mailing list, please send an email to info@losалтoscommunitycoalition.org. And I think that it was going to be posted in the chat. Yes, it is in the chat for your convenience. And we want to thank the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing LACC with financial and in-kind support. So please join me in thanking Vicki and Gary for a great discussion today, and we look forward to seeing you all in a few weeks. Thank you so much. Have a good day.